You can't possibly be serious. Admiral Vexic's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. Those bipedal mammals? The ones who haven't even figured out proper FTL travel? With all due respect, Admiral. Lieutenant Krell's voice was steady despite her superior's dismissal. I've spent 3 orbital cycles studying their behavioral patterns. The humans are different. The Admiral's compound eyes glinted under the harsh light of the command bridge. The massive view screen showed a slowly rotating blue-green planet, third from an unremarkable yellow star. Different how? They poison their own atmosphere, fight over arbitrary land divisions, and worship invisible deities. Sounds like every other Level 2 civilization we've encountered and subsequently recruited. The euphemism wasn't lost on anyone present. Krell flicked her antennae in the Zithak gesture of disagreement. That's precisely it, sir. They simultaneously possess the capacity for both extraordinary compassion and unimaginable cruelty. They create art celebrating peace while developing increasingly efficient ways to destroy one another. This contradictory behavior makes them unpredictable. The Admiral's tone suggested he wasn't asking a question so much as humoring his lieutenant. No, sir, it makes them dangerous. Admiral Vexic waved a clawed appendage dismissively. We've conquered species with technological capabilities centuries beyond these humans. The Draxians had plasma shields. The Volk had quantum weaponry. What do humans have? Nuclear fission and reality entertainment programming about renovating their primitive dwellings. A low, rumbling chuckle filled the command bridge. Captain Morg, a massive reptilian from the Crag system, stepped forward. His scales glinted with bioluminescent patterns indicating amusement. I've heard these stories before, Morg's voice rasped. Every new scout thinks they've found the exception. Remember the Nylaxians? 4 arms, supposedly superior cognitive processing, and what happened? They surrendered after we took out a single moon colony. Krell's exoskeleton flushed a deeper blue, the Zithak equivalent of frustrated blushing. Respectfully, Captain, the Nylaxians were pacifists who believed in spiritual transcendence through surrender. Humans have no such philosophy. Their historical records show they've never encountered a hardship they didn't eventually overcome, usually through stubborn persistence or creative problem-solving. Or dumb luck, someone muttered from a monitoring station. Your concern is noted, Lieutenant, Admiral Vexic said with finality. But the galactic hegemony has conquered 17 species across 12 systems. The invasion fleet is already positioned. We begin the standard protocol at 0600 tomorrow. Disable their primitive satellite network, demonstrate power by eliminating a mid-sized population center, and demand unconditional surrender. He gestured toward the view screen showing Earth. By this time next cycle, humans will be mining voxidium for us like all the others. As Krell returned to her station, she couldn't help but remember the transmission she'd intercepted just days earlier. A human entertainment broadcast, something they called a documentary. The subject, how honey badgers, small seemingly insignificant creatures, fought off predators many times their size through sheer tenacity and a complete disregard for conventional survival instincts. The narrator's words haunted her. The honey badger doesn't care, it just takes what it wants. She had a sinking feeling that humans might be the honey badgers of the galaxy. This coffee tastes like it was filtered through a sweaty gym sock. Commander Eliza Reed grimaced, taking another sip despite her complaint. That's because Technical Sergeant Mitchell's still on leave, and Lieutenant Novak doesn't know how to clean the machine properly. Colonel Way replied without looking up from his tablet. You drink it anyway. Caffeine is caffeine. Reed shrugged, settling into her chair at the monitoring station of the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Anything interesting overnight? Same old, same old. Russians testing our air defense responses, Chinese satellite adjusting orbit, and... Way stopped abruptly, frowning at his screen. And what? Reed leaned forward. Probably nothing. Just a weird anomaly the Deep Space Array picked up. Momentary gravimetric distortion near Jupiter's orbit. Reed raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound like nothing. NASA says it's likely instrumentation error. They're recalibrating. Way finally looked up. Why do you look like my cat when she spotted something shiny? Because, Colonel. Reed's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up additional data. This isn't the first anomaly this month. There have been 7 similar readings, progressively closer to Earth. Way set down his tablet. You think somebody's out there? I think if somebody was out there and didn't want us to know, they'd make sure we dismissed any evidence as instrumentation error. Before Way could respond, a junior officer burst into the monitoring room, face pale. Sir, ma'am, you need to see this. Every astronomical observatory in the world is reporting the same thing. The main screen switched to a live feed from the Hubble Space Telescope. There, emerging from behind the lunar surface, were ships. Hundreds of them. Sleek, metallic, and undeniably not from Earth. Well, Reed said, taking another sip of her terrible coffee. I guess this means I'm working overtime. The humans are scrambling their primitive aircraft, reported the Zithak tactical officer. Shall we eliminate them? Admiral Vexic observed the fleet's position on the holographic display. No need to waste energy. Let them observe our superiority. Lieutenant Krell, transmit the standard ultimatum. Krell hesitated. Sir, I recommend we... Just send the message, Lieutenant. With reluctance evident in her movements, Krell transmitted the hegemony's standard conquest declaration, translated into all major Earth languages. People of Earth, your planet is now under the authority of the galactic hegemony. Resistance is both futile and illogical. To demonstrate our power, we will eliminate one population center. You have one planetary rotation to prepare your surrender documents and resource allocation plans. The silence that followed was broken by Captain Morg. Which city should we eliminate? Their New York? Beijing? Moscow? Admiral Vexic contemplated. Their London seems appropriately symbolic, historical seat of a former global empire. Target locked, confirmed the weapons officer. Particle beam charged. Fire. The command was executed instantly. A brilliant beam of concentrated energy lanced down from the flagship, aimed directly at London. The bridge crew watched, expecting to see the familiar sight of urban infrastructure vaporizing. Instead, the beam diffused harmlessly several kilometers above the city, dispersing into a spectacular but ineffective light show. What happened? Vexic demanded, his exoskeleton darkening with anger. The weapons officer frantically checked his controls. Unknown, Admiral. The beam functioning correctly but couldn't penetrate some kind of... shield? Lieutenant Krell's antennae twitched nervously. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. The view screen shifted to show a human female in a military uniform, dark hair pulled back severely, eyes sharp with intelligence and something else. Amusement? This is Commander Eliza Reed of Earth's Unified Defense Command. Thank you for the light show. Very pretty. If you'd called ahead, we could have synchronized it with music. Admiral Vexic's mandibles clicked in confusion. Impossible. Your species has no defense technology capable of... Yeah, about that. The human interrupted. We've been expecting you, or someone like you, for about 70 years, actually. Captain Morg stepped forward. You lie. Our scans show... Your scans show exactly what we wanted them to show. Reed smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Look, I'll make this simple. The last 7 alien races that visited Earth didn't leave by choice. They left us gifts, technology, warnings. Each one said basically the same thing. Pretend to be harmless, because the hegemony is coming. Krell's exoskeleton paled to an almost translucent blue. Admiral, if they've had access to Draxian or Volk technology... Silence, Vexic snapped. Human, your deception is noted but irrelevant. No Level 2 civilization could possibly integrate advanced technology without destroying themselves. Reed's smile widened. That's the thing about humans, Admiral. We're really good at figuring out how to break things. Especially things that could break us first. She glanced off screen, nodded at something, then returned her gaze to the camera. We're sending up a small demonstration vessel. Please don't shoot it. That would be... unfortunate. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Admiral, the tactical officer reported. A small craft has launched from Earth's surface. It's moving at impossible speeds. On the view screen, a sleek black vessel no larger than a shuttle approached the invasion fleet. It maneuvered with impossible precision, weaving between the massive hegemony warships as if they were standing still. Impossible, whispered Captain Morg. Their propulsion system is unlike anything in our database. The small craft completed its demonstration run and took position directly in front of the flagship's bridge. A new transmission came through. The face that appeared wasn't Commander Reed's, but a grizzled older male human with deep lines etched into his face and silver hair cropped short. This is Colonel James Way, Earth Defense Force. That was one of our training vessels. Pilots only had the controls for about 3 weeks. He didn't smile. We've got about 10,000 more just like it, plus some stuff we've been saving for a special occasion. Admiral Vexic's composure was cracking. If you possess such technology, why haven't you expanded beyond your system? Why maintain the charade of primitive development? Wei chuckled, the sound somehow more menacing than reassuring. We learned from the mistakes of others. The Arcturians explained how they attracted the hegemony's attention by flaunting their achievements. The progenitors showed us how their rapid expansion made them vulnerable. But most importantly, the Zeta Reticulans taught us something valuable. What was that? Krell asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Wei leaned closer to the camera. That predators don't notice you if you act like prey, until it's too late. In the emergency conference room beneath the White House, President Davies listened as various military and intelligence officials debated their response to the alien arrival. We should deploy the Thanatos Protocol immediately, urged General Kowalski, his fist pounding the table. We've prepared for this for decades. The Thanatos Protocol is a last resort, countered Dr. Najafi, lead scientist of the Reverse Engineering Division. These craft don't match any of the signatures we've documented from previous visitors. We need more information. Information? Kowalski scoffed. They tried to blow up London. And our shields held perfectly, Dr. Najafi replied calmly. The Arcturian barrier technology worked exactly as designed. We're not in immediate danger. President Davies raised a hand, silencing the room. Commander Reed, Colonel Wei, what's your assessment? You've had direct contact. Reed exchanged a glance with Wei before responding. They're arrogant, Mr. President. Their invasion playbook is predictable. They've used it successfully against multiple civilizations. But they've never encountered a species that was prepared for them. Do we negotiate? Davies asked. Wei shook his head. These aren't diplomats, sir. They're conquistadors looking for resources and slave labor. The Zeta Reticulan archives were quite clear about the hegemony's methods. Then what do you recommend? Reed straightened. We show them enough of our hand to make them reconsider, without revealing everything. Make them believe retreat is their idea. Davies nodded slowly. Very well. You have authorization to proceed with Disclosure Protocol Beta. Just enough to scare them, not enough to provoke. As Reed and Wei left to implement the plan, Davies turned to the window, staring at the sky where invisible alien ships loomed. 70 years of preparation, he murmured. Let's hope it was enough. Lieutenant Krell found Admiral Vexic alone in his private chamber, reviewing historical files. Admiral, the human demonstration vessels have taken position around our fleet. They're not attacking, just watching. Vexic didn't look up. Did you know, Lieutenant, that in all our records of conquest there is no mention of Earth? Not once. Yet they claim to have encountered at least 7 spacefaring races. Perhaps those races never reported back to the hegemony? Precisely. Vexic finally looked up, his compound eyes reflecting the dim light. Which means either Earth destroyed them so completely that no distress signal was ever sent, or they chose not to report their findings. Krell finished. But why would any loyal species withhold such information? Perhaps, Vexic said slowly, they weren't loyal after we encountered Earth. The implication hung in the air between them. Lieutenant, what would you do if you discovered a predator far more dangerous than yourself? Krell's antennae twitched thoughtfully. I would either flee or attempt to make myself useful to it. Yes. Vexic closed the historical files. Summon the command staff immediately. When the bridge officers had assembled, Admiral Vexic addressed them with unprecedented gravity. The invasion of Earth is suspended indefinitely. We have encountered an anomaly that requires further study from a safe distance. Captain Morg's bioluminescent patterns flared with outrage. Admiral, with all respect, we cannot retreat from primitives. The hegemony has never encountered a level 2 civilization with level 5 technology. Vexic cut him off. A species that has somehow convinced multiple spacefaring races to give them advanced technology and then remains silent about doing so. You believe their claims? Asked the tactical officer incredulously. I believe the evidence of my eyes, Vexic replied. Their shield technology neutralized our primary weapon effortlessly. Their vessels move with propulsion systems unknown to our science. And most tellingly, they have chosen not to attack despite possessing the capability. Krell stepped forward. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. I believe the humans are displaying classic predatory behavior. Specifically, what they call cats playing with mice. They're demonstrating superiority while conserving energy, assessing whether we're more valuable as prey or something else. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Prepare for strategic withdrawal, Vexic ordered. But first, open a channel to their commander Reed. They're hailing us again. Lieutenant Novak announced. Reed and Wei exchanged glances. Put them through, Reed instructed. Admiral Vexic's alien face filled the screen. Commander Reed, after careful consideration, the galactic hegemony has decided to classify Earth as a protected cultural preserve. We recognize your species' unique development path and wish to study it from a respectful distance. Reed maintained a neutral expression. That's very considerate, Admiral. May I ask what prompted this change of heart? Just an hour ago, you were trying to vaporize London. New information has come to light, Vexic replied smoothly. The hegemony values diversity among sentient species. Your civilization clearly has much to offer the galactic community when you are ready to join it formally. Wei snorted softly beside Reed. Translation: you're too much trouble to conquer. If Vexic heard, he didn't acknowledge it. We will withdraw beyond your solar system's heliopause. Perhaps in the future, diplomatic relations can be established. That sounds agreeable. Reed nodded. Though I should mention, our defense network extends considerably beyond the heliopause. The Arcturians were quite thorough in their recommendations. Something like discomfort flickered across Vexic's alien features. Noted. We will maintain appropriate distance. Vexic out. As the transmission ended, a cheer erupted throughout the command center. Reed turned to Wei with a grin. Not bad for a day's work. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. Wei chuckled. The "we've got advanced alien tech" bluff works every time. Reed raised an eyebrow. Who says it's a bluff? Please. Wei rolled his eyes. If we actually had all that technology, I wouldn't be driving a 10-year-old hybrid with a busted air conditioner. Fair point, Reed conceded, stretching. Still, the Arcturian shield projectors worked perfectly, and those black jets with the experimental propulsion system made quite an impression. Top Gun pilots showing off, Wei grunted. Though I'll admit, having them fly in formation around the alien ships was inspired. Sometimes the best defense is making your opponent think you're not worth the trouble, Reed said, turning back to the monitoring station where the alien fleet could be seen beginning its retreat. I wonder if they'll ever figure it out. Figure what out? That humans might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because we're not the most advanced. We're just the most paranoid, the most adaptive, and possibly the most willing to blur the lines between truth and fiction when our survival is at stake. Wei considered this. You think they'll be back? Eventually, Reed nodded. But by then, maybe the fiction we created today will have become reality. 3 cycles later, Lieutenant Krell, now Captain Krell following Admiral Vexic's unexpected retirement, found herself summoned to the Hegemony High Command. The summons itself was unusual enough, but the location, the private chambers of Archon Zix, supreme leader of the Hegemony, was unprecedented for an officer of her rank. The Archon was ancient even by Zithak standards. His exoskeleton faded to a pale gray, his movements deliberate and precise. He dismissed his guards with a slight gesture, leaving Krell alone in his presence. Captain Krell, his voice rasped like dry leaves. Your report on the Earth encounter has caused quite a stir among the High Command. Krell maintained perfect posture. I merely reported what we observed, Archon. Yes. A Level 2 civilization, with apparent access to Level 5 technology from multiple sources, none of whom ever reported contact to the Hegemony. The Archon's compound eyes studied her intently. Most troubling. Indeed, Archon. What the High Command finds most disturbing, however, is not what you reported, but what you omitted. Krell's antennae stiffened in alarm. Archon, I assure you... Relax, Captain. The Archon raised a gnarled claw. Your discretion is precisely why you were selected for this conversation. He activated a privacy field around the chamber, ensuring absolute confidentiality. What I am about to tell you is known only to the highest echelons of the Hegemony. Earth is not unknown to us. It has been classified as interdiction level Omega for over 300 cycles. Krell's exoskeleton paled with shock. Omega? But that designation is reserved for extinction-level threats, yes. The Archon's mandibles clicked softly. The Hegemony has encountered Earth before, Captain. Long ago, before either of us was born. The outcome was not favorable. But humanity shows no record of extraterrestrial contact prior to our arrival, except for the alleged 7 races they mentioned. Because the contact wasn't with humanity, the Archon said quietly. It was with Earth itself. He activated a holographic projection showing a dramatically different Earth, one with massive supercontinent configurations, strange alien architectures spanning entire regions, and orbital constructs that dwarfed anything in the current Hegemony arsenal. The dominant species on Earth at that time called themselves the Architects, advanced beyond our comprehension, capable of planetary engineering and stellar manipulation. The hegemony of that era, in its arrogance, attempted conquest. The hologram shifted to show massive battles, hegemony vessels being systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to defy physics. We were utterly defeated. The Architects could have pursued us, eliminated the hegemony entirely. Instead, they issued a single warning, that Earth was to be left alone to develop naturally from that point forward. What happened to them? Krell asked, transfixed by the images. They chose extinction, the Archon said simply. Having reached what they considered evolutionary perfection, they engineered their own end, allowing simpler life forms to inherit the planet. But before doing so, they established cosmic safeguards. The 7 races that gave humans technology were not the first, the Archon confirmed. Throughout Earth's history, certain species have been drawn there, compelled by triggers we don't understand, to test humanity or provide specific knowledge at critical junctures, always departing with the same message to others. Earth only pretends to sleep, Krell whispered. Precisely. The Architects' consciousness may be gone, but their protective measures remain, dormant until needed. The shield that stopped our particle beam? The propulsion technology that shouldn't exist at humanity's development level? Not gifts from other races, but remnants of the Architects, activating in Earth's defense. Krell's scientific mind raced. But why maintain the charade of conquest, if the hegemony knew of Earth's status? Politics, Captain, the Archon sighed. The truth of our historical defeat is known only to the Sovereign 12. Admiral Vexic was selected for the Earth mission precisely because of your presence on his crew. Me? Krell's antenna twitched in confusion. Your psychological profile indicated you would recognize the threat humanity posed, and convince Vexic to withdraw without requiring the full activation of Earth's defenses. A scenario that would have exposed the High Command's duplicity and potentially triggered whatever failsafes the Architects left behind. The Archon deactivated the hologram. Your new assignment, Captain Krell, is to establish a deep space monitoring station beyond Earth's solar system. You will observe, record, but never interfere. And most importantly, you will ensure no other hegemony forces, or any other spacefaring races, disturb humanity's development. For how long, Archon? The ancient leader's mandibles formed what might have been a smile. Until they're ready to join us, or until they're ready to replace us, whichever comes first. You're still watching those alien ships, aren't you? Dr. Najafi entered the observatory where Commander Reed stood before a massive display showing a cluster of retreating signals at the edge of the solar system. Monitoring, Reed corrected. They've maintained their distance, but they haven't left completely. Najafi moved beside her. Curious behavior for conquerors. I don't think they were ever here to conquer us, Reed said thoughtfully. Not really. It was a test. A test we passed, apparently, Najafi observed. Thanks in large part to your theatrical skills. Reed smiled slightly. Hardly theater when the Arcturian shield actually worked. Though I'll admit, the rest was creative interpretation of our capabilities. Still, Najafi mused. It's remarkable how quickly they withdrew, almost as if they knew something we didn't. That's what bothers me, Reed admitted. The question isn't why they left. It's why they came in the first place if they were going to retreat so easily. Najafi considered this. Perhaps they were confirming something. Or perhaps, Reed said, eyes still fixed on the distant alien signals, they were delivering a message. What message? That we're not alone. Reed turned to face Najafi, but also that we're not unprotected. As if responding to her words, an alert sounded from a nearby console. A junior officer called out, Commander, we're detecting an energy signature from the lunar excavation site. The artifact is activating. Reed and Najafi exchanged startled glances. The lunar artifact, a mysterious object discovered buried beneath the moon's surface decades ago, had remained dormant despite all attempts to study it. Get me Colonel Way, Reed ordered, already moving toward the door, and contact the President. Tell them Sleeping Giant Protocol is now in effect. What does it mean? Najafi asked, hurrying to keep pace. Reed's expression was a mixture of concern and wonder. It means Earth is waking up. On the dark side of the moon, in a cavern untouched by human hands until recently, a crystalline structure the size of a small building pulsed with soft blue light. Etched into its surface in dozens of languages, some human, some decidedly not, was a simple message. Every dead race left one warning: Earth only pretends to sleep. Around the structure, dormant machinery buried for millions of years began to hum with renewed purpose, responding to signals from the departing hegemony fleet. Earth's true defense system was finally coming online, and somewhere in the vastness of space, the last of the architects smiled. Captain Krell's monitoring station had been operational for less than a cycle when the readings began changing. Subtle at first, fluctuations in Earth's electromagnetic field, anomalous energy signatures from its moon, but growing stronger by the day. "Captain," her science officer reported, "the dormancy patterns are shifting. The architect's systems are reactivating." Krell observed the data with scientific fascination and existential dread. Estimated time until full activation? Unknown, but at the current progression rate, less than 5 Earth years. 5 years. A mere blink in cosmic terms. Krell considered her options carefully, then made a decision that would likely end her career, or worse. "Prepare a transmission to Earth, directed to Commander Reed personally." "Captain?" The science officer's antennae quivered with alarm. "The Archon's orders explicitly forbid—" "I'm well aware," Krell interrupted. "But if the Architect's systems fully activate before humanity understands what they're dealing with, the consequences could be catastrophic. For everyone." She composed the message herself, choosing each word with care. "Commander Reed, what awakens on your moon is not a gift, but a responsibility. The Architects left Earth not to the strongest species that would evolve, but to the wisest. Before you embrace their power, understand their mistake. They achieved perfection at the cost of compassion. The hegemony fears you not for what you are, but for what Earth is preparing you to become. Choose your path carefully. The galaxy has had enough conquerors." A concerned observer. As the transmission was sent, Krell turned her gaze toward the small blue planet on her view screen. She had studied humans long enough to recognize their contradictions, their capacity for both terrible destruction and remarkable empathy. "What do you think they'll do?" her science officer asked quietly. Krell's antennae twitched in what might have been hope. "Something unexpected. It's what humans do best." Best. Commander Reed stared at the cryptic message that had appeared on her secure terminal. Colonel Wei read it over her shoulder, his usual stoicism giving way to visible concern. A warning or a trap? He wondered aloud. "Neither," Reed decided after a moment. "It's advice." President Davies joined them, having been briefed on the lunar activation. "Our scientists say the artifact is generating enough energy to power the entire planet, and it's still increasing. We could have weaponry beyond imagination. Or we could have a test we're about to fail," Reed countered. "Sir, every race we know of that achieved technological dominance eventually triggered its own extinction. The Architects included, apparently." Wei nodded slowly. "Power without wisdom is just a faster path to destruction." Davies studied the alien message again. "So what do you recommend?" Reed took a deep breath. "That we do what humans have always done best. Adapt, but on our terms. We study the technology gradually. Integrate what improves life rather than what simply enhances power, and most importantly," she smiled slightly, "we keep being unpredictable." "How so?" Davies asked. "By sending a reply," Reed said, already typing. "To our concerned observer, message received and appreciated. Humanity chooses neither to conquer nor to be conquered. We prefer conversation to confrontation, and find innovation more interesting than domination. The Architects may have left Earth to us, but the future belongs to those who can cooperate across differences. Our invitations remains open. Visit as neighbors, not as subjects or superiors. We promise only this: Earth sleeps lightly, but dreams of stars." Commander Reed, speaking for humanity. Unofficially. She sent the transmission, knowing the alien observer would receive it, and hoping they would understand. "You realize," Wei said with a half-smile, "that you just appointed yourself Earth's unofficial ambassador to advanced alien civilizations?" Reed shrugged. "Someone had to do it. Besides, I've always been good at bluffing." "That wasn't a bluff," Davies observed quietly. "That was honesty. Perhaps the first honest communication between our species and theirs." As they turned to leave the communication center, the lunar artifact's energy readings stabilized, neither increasing nor shutting down, as if waiting for humanity to decide what happened next. Earth continued its orbit around its unremarkable yellow star, seeming from a distance to be just another life-bearing planet. Beneath its surface, ancient systems hummed, neither fully awake nor truly sleeping, And in the vastness of space, Captain Krell received Reed's message, mandibles clicking in what her species considered laughter. Not of derision, but of relief, and perhaps a touch of admiration. Perhaps there was hope for both their species after all. The galaxy, it seemed, still had capacity for surprises. I'm starting to think we should have gone with the shoot first. Ask questions never, approach, Lieutenant Novak muttered, tapping furiously at his console. At least then we wouldn't be drowning in diplomatic paperwork. Commander Reed looked up from her tablet with a bemused expression. You'd prefer an interstellar war to filling out forms? That's the most lieutenant thing I've ever heard. You say that like they're mutually exclusive, Novak replied. We've had 3 different alien delegations arrive this month alone, each with their own protocols, environmental requirements, and cultural taboos. Do you know the Vexillian ambassador requires all electronic devices to emit a specific frequency, because otherwise they interpret it as aggressive communication? Yes, I know, Reed sighed. I was the one who had to explain to the Joint Chiefs why we needed to remodulate every device in the lunar diplomatic facility. Colonel Wei entered the command center, his perpetually serious expression looking even grimmer than usual. We've got a situation. Reed straightened immediately. In the 6 months since Earth's first official contact with the galactic hegemony, situation had become a loaded term. What kind of situation? The someone used the wrong honorific and now we need to send fruit baskets kind, or the power up the Arcturian defense grid kind? Neither, Wei replied, sliding a data tablet across to her. The artifact is communicating. Reed's eyes widened as she scanned the report. The lunar artifact, the massive crystalline structure that had activated following the hegemony's retreat, had remained in a stable, semi-dormant state for months. Scientists had been studying it cautiously, but direct interaction had been minimal by presidential directive. These patterns, Reed murmured. They're responding to something? Wei nodded. It started 18 hours ago. At first we thought it was reacting to the Melbari delegation's shuttle passing nearby, but the patterns continued after they departed. What's it saying? That's just it. It's not using any language we recognize, not even matching patterns from any of the alien linguistics databases we've been given access to. Reed scrolled through the data, a familiar, uneasy feeling settling in her stomach. Have we received any new communications from our concerned observer? Captain Krell? Not since the lunar research facility was established. Why? Just a hunch, Reed said, standing. I need to get to the moon. Captain Krell reviewed the latest telemetry from Earth's lunar surface with growing concern. The monitoring station's instruments were detecting energy fluctuations from the architect's artifact that matched no known activation sequence. Captain, her science officer reported, we're detecting approaching vessels at the edge of the system. Hegemony? Krell asked sharply. No, the signature doesn't match any known hegemony configuration. The science officer's antennae twitched nervously. In fact, it doesn't match any species in our database. Krell moved to the main view screen, mandibles clicking in agitation. Show me. The display revealed 3 massive ships, their design unlike anything in hegemony records. Sleek, asymmetrical vessels that seemed to absorb rather than reflect surrounding light. They were moving with deliberate slowness, as if unconcerned about detection. They're on a direct course for Earth, confirmed the tactical officer. Estimated arrival, 48 Earth hours. Krell's exoskeleton paled slightly. Open a secure channel to Commander Reed. Captain, the Archon explicitly forbade. The Archon isn't here. Krell cut him off. And those ships aren't here coincidentally. They've detected the artifact's activation. She paused, compound eyes fixed on the approaching vessels. Something ancient is responding to something even more ancient. After a moment of hesitation, her communications officer nodded. Channel open. The lunar research facility was a marvel of human engineering and alien technological adaptation. Built into the natural cavern housing the artifact, its transparent aluminum domes and reinforced structures allowed scientists to study the artifact while maintaining appropriate distance. Reed stepped out of the shuttle, immediately greeted by Dr. Najafi, whose usual composed demeanor seemed strained. Commander, thank you for coming so quickly. The artifact's behavior has evolved since our last report. Evolved how? Reed asked, following Najafi through the facility's main airlock. It's generating what appear to be holographic projections, though not like any holographic technology we've encountered before. Najafi led her into the main observation chamber. They appear and disappear irregularly, lasting only seconds, but they're becoming more frequent. Reed stopped short as they entered the vast cavern. The crystalline artifact dominated the space, its blue light now pulsing with a clear rhythm. Around it, ghostly images flickered in and out of existence. Strange geometric shapes, what looked like star maps, and occasionally fleeting glimpses of beings unlike any species Earth had encountered. "How long has this been happening?" Reed asked quietly. "The projections started approximately 6 hours ago," Najafi replied. "But there's something else." She hesitated. "We've been detecting quantum entanglement signatures emanating from the artifact. It's communicating with something far away." Before Reed could respond, a junior officer rushed into the chamber. "Commander, urgent transmission coming in on your secure channel." Reed frowned. Only a handful of individuals had access to that channel. "Put it through to the command center. I'll take it there." As she turned to leave, the artifact's pulsing suddenly intensified. The holographic projections stabilized, coalescing into a single massive image, a star map covering the entire ceiling of the cavern. A particular location pulsed with the same rhythm as the artifact itself. "Dr. Najafi," Reed said slowly, "I need that location identified immediately." In the command center, Reed activated her secure terminal. Captain Krell's alien features appeared on screen, her exoskeleton noticeably paler than Reed remembered. "Commander Reed." Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation Reed had learned to recognize. "Earth is in danger." "I'm starting to get that impression," Reed replied grimly. "Would this have anything to do with 3 unknown ships approaching our system?" Krell's compound eyes widened slightly. "Your detection capabilities have improved." "Not really. Your timing is just convenient." Reed leaned closer to the screen. "What aren't you telling me, Captain?" Krell seemed to struggle internally before responding. "The vessels approaching Earth are not in any hegemony database. Their technology appears to significantly exceed our own. And you think they're connected to the artifact?" "I believe they are responding to it," Krell corrected. "Commander, there is something I must confess. The architects were not entirely extinct." Reed felt a chill run down her spine. "Explain." "According to classified hegemony records, a faction of the architects disagreed with the species' decision to engineer their own extinction. They left Earth, venturing deep into unexplored space. The hegemony lost track of them centuries ago. And you think they're coming back, after millions of years?" "The artifact was left as more than a defensive system," Krell said. "It was a beacon, designed to activate under specific conditions and signal to the surviving architects that Earth was ready." "Ready for what?" "That," Krell admitted, "even the hegemony does not know." Reed was silent for a moment, processing the implications. "Why are you telling me this? Won't your superiors execute you for treason or something equally dramatic?" Krell's mandibles formed what Reed had come to recognize as the Zithak equivalent of a resigned smile. "Probably, but I've studied humanity long enough to believe that whatever the architects intended, your species deserves to face it with all available information." Before Reed could respond, Dr. Najafi burst into the command center. "Commander, we've identified the location in the star map." "Where is it?" Reed asked, though she already suspected the answer. "It's the precise coordinates where those 3 unknown ships are currently located," Najafi confirmed. "And there's more. The artifact is generating a new message, in English." On the screen, Captain Krell's antennae stiffened in surprise. "That should be impossible. What does it say?" Reed asked. Najafi handed her a tablet. On it was a simple message. "The children of Earth have awakened. The progenitors return. Prepare for ascension." "Ascension," President Davies repeated, face grave on the secure video conference. "That doesn't sound ominous at all." "It's likely a translation approximation," Dr. Najafi explained. "The concept might not have a direct equivalent in English." Reed, Wei, and the Lunar Facility's senior staff were gathered in the command center, briefing Earth's leadership on the unfolding situation. "Captain Krell seems to believe these progenitors are returning architects," Reed explained. "A faction that left Earth instead of choosing extinction. And we're just supposed to trust the word of a hegemony officer?" General Kowalski scoffed. "The same hegemony that tried to blow up London?" "Captain Krell has proven herself an ally," Reed countered. "And her information aligns with what the artifact is communicating." "The question," Wei interjected, "is what we do about these approaching ships. If they truly are architects, or their descendants, they possess technology far beyond anything we've encountered." "Including our borrowed Arcturian defenses," Reed added. President Davies leaned forward. "Options?" "We have 3, Wei replied immediately. 1. We activate all defensive systems and prepare for potential conflict. 2. We attempt communication and diplomatic contact. 3. We do nothing and see what they want. I vote for option 1, General Kowalski said firmly. Arcturian tech or not, we stand ready to defend Earth. With all due respect, General, Reed countered. If these beings are truly architects, our defenses would be like pointing water pistols at a supernova. Najafi cleared her throat. There may be a fourth option. The artifact appears to be responding to our presence now. It might be possible to communicate through it. All eyes turned to her. Explain, Davies prompted. The quantum entanglement signatures suggest the artifact isn't just sending signals. It's part of a network. If we can interface with it correctly, we might be able to send our own message to the approaching vessels. And say what? Wei asked skeptically. Please don't obliterate us? How about the truth? Reed suggested. That humanity has only just begun to understand the legacy left to us, that we're still growing as a species, and that we'd prefer conversation to ascension, whatever that means. Davies was quiet for a moment, considering. Dr. Najafi, can you establish this interface? With Commander Reed's help, yes. The artifact seems to respond to her presence more than others. Reed raised an eyebrow. It does? The energy fluctuations increase by approximately 23% whenever you enter the chamber, Najafi confirmed. We've been tracking patterns. Well, Reed said with forced lightness, that's not concerning at all. Davies made his decision. Proceed with Dr. Najafi's plan. Try to establish communication. Colonel Wei, simultaneously prepare our defenses, quietly. Let's not appear hostile, but I want options if this goes sideways. As the meeting concluded, Reed found herself staring at the artifact's message again. Prepare for ascension. What does one wear to an ascension? She muttered to herself. Business casual or formal apocalypse? The interface Dr. Najafi designed was elegantly simple in concept, horrifyingly complex in execution. It required positioning a quantum resonance chamber, hastily adapted from alien technology, directly adjacent to the artifact, then using it to generate patterns matching those observed in the artifact's emissions. Think of it as learning to speak a new language, Najafi explained as technicians made final adjustments. We're mimicking sounds before we understand the grammar. Reed eyed the apparatus skeptically. And this won't accidentally trigger some ancient doomsday function? The artifact has had numerous opportunities to destroy us already, Najafi pointed out reasonably. It seems more interested in communication than annihilation. Comforting, Reed muttered. The final preparations completed, Reed took her position inside the resonance chamber. The transparent walls gave her a clear view of the artifact, now pulsing faster than before. Ready when you are, Commander, Najafi's voice came through her earpiece. Reed took a deep breath. Activate the sequence. The resonance chamber hummed to life, generating quantum patterns that rippled toward the artifact like invisible waves. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, the artifact's pulsing synchronized with the chamber's emissions. The holographic projections returned, but instead of random images, they formed a coherent scene around Reed. The vastness of space, stars streaming by as if she were traveling at impossible speeds. It's working! Najafi's excited voice seemed distant. The quantum entanglement signatures have intensified. You're connecting to the network. Reed found herself unable to respond, transfixed by the simulation surrounding her. The stellar journey continued until she appeared to approach a massive structure. A space station or habitat of some kind, its architecture both beautiful and utterly alien. The scene shifted, and suddenly she was inside the structure, standing before what appeared to be a council of beings. They were humanoid in the broadest sense, bipedal with symmetrical features, but clearly not human. Their bodies seemed to shimmer between physical and energy states, as if matter and consciousness were interchangeable concepts. One of the beings stepped forward, its form solidifying slightly. We greet the awakened of Earth. A voice resonated directly in Reed's mind. The progenitors acknowledge your signal. Reed found her voice. I am Commander Eliza Reed of Earth. We received your message about ascension. We'd like to understand what that means before you arrive. The being's form rippled with what might have been amusement. Arrival is a concept bounded by physical limitations. We are already present through the nexus you have activated. The artifact, Reed realized. You're communicating through it right now. The nexus is more than a communication device. It is a door, a test, a heritage. The being gestured, and the environment around Reed transformed again, showing Earth as it was millions of years ago. Continents differently arranged, strange cities spanning entire regions. We left this world when our kind divided over the future of consciousness. Some chose ending. We chose becoming. Becoming what? That which exists between matter and energy, between time and potential. The being's form shifted again. Your kind has awakened the nexus earlier than anticipated. Your development pattern is unexpected. We get that a lot, Reed replied, falling back on humor in the face of cosmic revelations. Look, we're not ready for ascension or becoming or whatever evolutionary leap you're offering. We're still figuring out the basics of interspecies diplomacy and sustainable fusion power. The beings seem to consider this. The choice is not ours to impose. The Nexus awakens only when the inheritors are ready to understand their options. Options? To remain as you are, to become as we are, to forge a path between. The being gestured again, and Reed saw multiple timelines of Earth's potential futures spreading like branches of an infinite tree. All paths are valid. The progenitors return not to judge, but to witness and, if requested, to guide. Reed felt a strange relief wash over her. So you're not here to force some transformation on us or claim Earth as your ancient property? Something like amusement emanated from the being. Earth has always belonged to itself. We were merely its first children to achieve awareness. You are its latest. The choice of Earth's future belongs to those who exist in its present. And the ships approaching our solar system? Physical manifestations necessary for those who still think in physical terms. They carry observers, not conquerors. Reed processed this information, trying to separate genuine relief from lingering suspicion. Why now? Why has the artifact, the Nexus, activated at this particular moment? The being's form shifted again, revealing images of the hegemony fleet retreating from Earth. The Nexus was programmed to awaken when Earth's children demonstrated both the capacity to defend and the wisdom to choose peace when possible. Your response to the hegemony satisfied those conditions. Reed almost laughed. So our elaborate bluff actually saved us? Deception employed to prevent violence rather than initiate it showed necessary evolution of thought. Many species master technology before wisdom. Few recognize that restraint can demonstrate strength more effectively than dominance. Before Reed could respond, the environment around her flickered. The being's form destabilized momentarily. Our direct communication must conclude for now. The Nexus was not designed for prolonged connection at your current evolutionary stage. Our physical representatives will arrive in Earth's orbit soon. They will wait for your invitation before proceeding further. Wait, Reed called as the vision began to fade. You said we had options. What happens if we choose to remain as we are? The being's final words echoed as the holographic environment dissolved. Then the progenitors will continue our journey, and the Nexus will remain dormant until humanity chooses differently. Earth's children will forge their own path among the stars, neither assisted nor hindered by our presence. The choice is and always has been yours. When Reed emerged from the resonance chamber, she found the entire research team staring at her in stunned silence. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. Did something happen to my face? Commander, Dr. Najafi said carefully, you were in quantum resonance for over 4 hours. 4 hours? Reed blinked in surprise. It felt like minutes. And you were conversing, Wei added, his usual stoicism cracked by evident concern. In languages none of us recognized, interspersed with English. The artifact responded to everything you said. Reed took a moment to process this. I need to speak with President Davies immediately. And someone get me some coffee. Apparently cosmic diplomacy is exhausting. Later, after briefing Earth's leadership and watching the resulting political chaos unfold, Reed found herself alone in the observation dome, staring up at the stars. The approaching ships were now visible through the facility's telescopes. Massive, graceful vessels holding position just beyond Mars' orbit, waiting patiently as humanity debated its future. Making friends with ancient ascended beings now? Colonel Wei's voice interrupted her thoughts as he joined her at the viewport. Your networking skills continue to impress, Reed smiled tiredly. Less making friends, and more awkwardly explaining why we're not ready for their cosmic graduation ceremony. Wei handed her a steaming cup of coffee. The president's advisors are split. Half want to embrace this ascension possibility immediately, seeing technological advantages. The other half want to politely decline and continue our independent development. And you? Reed asked. What does the perpetually skeptical Colonel Wei think? Wei considered the question seriously. I think humanity has always been best when finding its own path. We adapt, we learn, we stumble forward. Sometimes the longest road teaches the most valuable lessons. Poetic, Reed observed with surprise. I didn't know you had it in you. There's a lot about me you don't know, Commander, Wei replied with the ghost of a smile. For instance, I make excellent coffee. Reed took a sip and raised an eyebrow. So you do. Is this your way of suggesting we should decline the progenitor's offer? It's my way of suggesting that whatever humanity decides, it should be our decision, not made from fear, greed, or even well-intentioned guidance from beings who left Earth millions of years ago. Reed nodded, turning back to the viewport. They said something similar, actually, that the choice belongs to those who exist in Earth's present. Smart aliens, Wei acknowledged. The question is, Reed mused, what do we do with that choice? 6 weeks later, humanity had its answer. After unprecedented global referendums, scientific conferences, and diplomatic consultations with the handful of alien species Earth now maintained relations with, a consensus emerged. Earth would respectfully decline immediate ascension, but welcome cultural and scientific exchange with the progenitors. The Nexus would remain as a dormant connection, available for future generations to reconsider when humanity had achieved greater unity and understanding of its place in the cosmos. Reed stood with the Earth delegation at the newly constructed Lunar Diplomatic Center as the progenitor representatives prepared to depart. Unlike the holographic versions she'd encountered, their physical forms were more solid, still shimmering occasionally between states, but largely manifested as tall, graceful beings with iridescent skin and eyes that reflected starlight. Your choice is respected, the progenitor ambassador stated, its voice melodic even through the translation systems. Few species choose the longer path when offered acceleration. Humans are notoriously stubborn about doing things the hard way, Reed replied with a small smile. We found that shortcuts sometimes lead to dead ends. A wise observation. The ambassador extended a hand, a gesture it had adopted after observing human customs. The connection remains. When Earth calls again, the progenitors will answer. As Reed watched their shuttle depart, Captain Krell approached, having been grudgingly permitted by the hegemony to serve as their official observer to the historic meeting. Your superiors must be relieved, Reed commented. No instantaneous evolutionary leap for the unpredictable humans. Krell's mandibles clicked in amusement. On the contrary, the Archon is positively apoplectic that the progenitors offered you ascension at all. In the hegemony's entire history, no species has ever been approached directly. We're special that way, Reed said dryly. Indeed. Krell's compound eyes studied Reed curiously. If I may ask a personal question, Commander. You were the first to connect with the Nexus, the first to communicate with the progenitors. Did you not feel tempted by their offer? Reed considered the question carefully. Of course. Who wouldn't want to skip ahead to cosmic enlightenment? She looked up at the stars, now knowing just how many were watching Earth with interest. But humanity's story shouldn't be about finding the fastest path to the end. It should be about the journey itself, with all its messiness, setbacks, and unexpected detours. A very human perspective, Krell observed, not unkindly. Besides, Reed added with a hint of the humor that had become her trademark in interspecies diplomacy, if we became energy beings, think of all the excellent coffee we'd miss out on. Krell's antennae twitched in what Reed had come to recognize as genuine amusement. The hegemony's assessment of Earth requires significant revision. You are not merely dangerous because you pretend to sleep. Oh? What are we then? You are dangerous, Krell said thoughtfully, because you insist on dreaming your own dreams, even when offered someone else's. As they watched the progenitor vessels disappear into the darkness of space, Reed couldn't help but think that was perhaps the most accurate assessment of humanity yet. Earth continued its orbit around its unremarkable yellow star, seeming from a distance to be just another life-bearing planet. Beneath its surface, ancient systems returned to their dormant state, neither fully awake nor truly sleeping, waiting patiently for humanity to write the next chapter of its story. And somewhere in the vastness of space, ancient eyes watched with interest as the youngest children of Earth charted their own path among the stars. Author's note: the greatest power is not in having all the answers, but in asking the right questions. The most profound wisdom sometimes lies in knowing when to refuse a shortcut. And perhaps the most human trait of all is not our technology or our ingenuity, but our stubborn insistence on finding our own way, even when the universe offers us a map. HFY. Lieutenant Dale Matthews stared at the mission brief hovering above his workstation, convinced he'd misread something. For the third time, Lieutenant, you're to serve as our diplomatic representative to the Salaxian Confederation, Commander Walsh repeated, the faintest hint of amusement creeping into her otherwise professional tone. Their delegation specifically requested a human representative. Dale ran a hand through his military short hair, frowning. With all due respect, Commander, I'm a xenobiologist, not a diplomat. I study alien biology. I don't negotiate treaties with them. And that's precisely why you're perfect for this assignment, Walsh countered, swiping through his service record. Your published papers on interspecies communication and behavioral adaptation are required reading at the Academy now. Besides, the Zalaxians aren't looking for a career diplomat. They specifically requested someone with your expertise. But this isn't a debate, Lieutenant. The transport leaves at 0600 tomorrow. Don't be late. With that, Commander Walsh's hologram flickered out, leaving Dale alone with his suddenly very complicated future. Fantastic, he muttered to the empty room. Just absolutely fantastic. The Zalaxian orbital station was a marvel of engineering, a massive ring structure that rotated slowly around a dwarf star, generating artificial gravity through centrifugal force rather than the magnetic fields used in human installations. As Dale's transport ship docked, he couldn't help but admire the elegance of the design. His admiration was short-lived, however, as the reality of his situation came crashing back. He was about to be the first human to set foot on a Zalaxian diplomatic station, with absolutely no idea why they'd requested him specifically. Just smile and nod, he told himself as the airlock cycled. Smile and nod, and for God's sake, don't touch anything that looks important. The airlock hissed open, revealing a reception party of 3 Zalaxians. They were tall, slender beings with iridescent scales covering their bodies in patterns of blue and purple. Their faces were vaguely avian, with sharp beaks and large, expressive eyes. 2 of them wore what appeared to be formal attire, flowing robes adorned with intricate patterns. The third, standing slightly behind the others, was dressed more simply. Lieutenant Matthews. The foremost Zalaxian greeted him, their universal translator rendering the clicks and chirps of their native language into perfect English. I am Ambassador Zixilith. On behalf of the Zalaxian Confederation, welcome to Orbital Station Nexus 7. Dale snapped to attention and offered the traditional Zalaxian greeting, a slight bow with his hands pressed flat against his thighs. Ambassador Zixilith, thank you for your welcome. The United Earth Coalition is honored by your invitation. The ambassador's head tilted slightly, the Zalaxian equivalent of a smile. Your pronunciation is excellent, Lieutenant. Few non-Zalaxians bother to learn our greeting protocols. I believe that understanding begins with respect, Ambassador, Dale replied diplomatically, silently thanking the intensive cultural briefing he'd received during the journey. Indeed. Zixilith gestured to the Zalaxians flanking them. This is Sub-Ambassador Kreltix, who will assist with our discussions, and Junior Diplomatic Attaché Nirizal, who will serve as your guide during your stay. Dale nodded to each in turn, noting that the junior attaché, Nirizal, seemed younger than the others, her scales a brighter, more vibrant shade of blue. She returned his gaze with what appeared to be curiosity. If you'll follow me, Lieutenant, Nirizal said, stepping forward, I'll show you to your quarters. Ambassador Zixilith has scheduled our first meeting for tomorrow morning, to allow you time to acclimate to our environment. That's very considerate, thank you, Dale replied, shouldering his duffel bag and following the young Zalaxian through the station's curving corridors. As they walked, he noticed that other Zalaxians gave them a wide berth, some even pressing themselves against the walls as they passed. A few whispered among themselves, shooting curious glances in his direction. Is something wrong? Dale asked quietly, leaning closer to Nirizal. Everyone seems nervous. The young Zalaxian's head crest fluttered, their equivalent of a nervous laugh. You're the first human many of them have seen in person. Your species has quite the reputation. Reputation? Dale raised an eyebrow. What kind of reputation? Nirizal hesitated, her large eyes darting around as if checking for eavesdroppers. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in your quarters, Lieutenant. Some matters are better discussed in private. Now thoroughly intrigued, Dale nodded and followed her to a door marked with unfamiliar symbols. She placed her scaled hand on a panel and the door slid open. These will be your accommodations during your stay, she explained, gesturing for him to enter. We've attempted to replicate standard human living conditions, but please inform me if anything is unsuitable. The room was spacious, with clean lines and minimal decoration. The furniture looked roughly human-proportioned, though the bed was longer than standard, likely to accommodate the Zalaxians' taller frames. A large viewport dominated one wall, offering a breathtaking view of the dwarf star and surrounding space. It's perfect, Dale assured her, dropping his bag on what appeared to be a desk. Now, about this reputation humans apparently have. Nirizal's crest flattened against her head, a sign of embarrassment, if Dale remembered his briefing correctly. You must understand, Lieutenant. Until recently, most Zalaxians had only encountered humans through official channels or media reports. And those reports painted us in a negative light? Dale guessed. Not negative, she corrected quickly. Terrifying. Dale blinked in surprise. Terrifying? Us? He glanced down at himself. Average height, average build, about as threatening as a teddy bear according to his ex. Why? Your species' resilience is unsettling to many non-humans, Nirizal explained, perching delicately on the edge of a chair designed for someone twice her width. You survive conditions that would kill most sentient species. You consume substances that would be lethal to others. Your endurance is almost mythical. You're making us sound like monsters, Dale laughed, but his humor faded when he saw her expression. Wait, you're serious? There's a reason the Universal Security Council designated Earth as a Class 4 death world, Lieutenant, she said quietly. Most civilized species evolved on worlds with far less extreme conditions. We Zalaxians, for instance, come from a world with minimal temperature variation, no large predators, and very few natural disasters. Dale sat heavily on the edge of the bed. So humans are, what? The galactic equivalent of cockroaches? Hard to kill and everywhere? Nirizal's head tilted in confusion. I'm not familiar with cockroaches, but if they are resilient creatures, then perhaps the comparison is apt. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. There are stories, unofficial accounts, of human soldiers continuing to fight with injuries that would have killed any Zalaxian instantly. Of human explorers surviving in environments that our scientists can only study remotely. You are impressive and frightening in equal measure. And that's why I'm here? Because humans are tough? Dale frowned, trying to make sense of the situation. Not exactly. Nirizal stood abruptly. I've said more than I should. Ambassador Zixlith will explain everything tomorrow. For now, you should rest. Our day cycle is slightly longer than Earth's. Before Dale could protest, she had slipped out the door, leaving him alone with his thoughts and a growing sense that this diplomatic mission was going to be anything but routine. The next morning, or what passed for morning on a space station, Dale was escorted to a large conference room by a silent Zalaxian guard. Ambassador Zixlith and Sub-Ambassador Kreltix were already waiting, along with several other Zalaxians Dale hadn't met. Nirizal sat at the far end of the table, datapad in hand, presumably to take notes. Lieutenant Matthews, Zixlith greeted him. I trust you rested well? Very well, thank you, Dale lied, having spent most of the night researching Zalaxian culture and biology on his datapad, trying to understand why they might view humans as terrifying. I'm eager to begin our discussions. Excellent. The ambassador gestured to an empty seat. Please join us. As Dale sat, he noticed a subtle tension in the room. The other Zalaxians seemed to be maintaining a careful distance from him, their postures rigid. Before we begin, Zixlith continued, I must ask, how much did Attaché Nirizal share with you regarding the purpose of your visit? Dale glanced at the young Zalaxian, who seemed to shrink in her seat. Only that humans have something of a reputation among your people. She didn't elaborate on why I specifically was requested. I see. The ambassador exchanged a look with Kreltix. Then I shall be direct. We have a problem, Lieutenant Matthews. A problem that we believe only a human can solve. I'm listening, Dale said, leaning forward. Zixlith tapped a control on the table, and a holographic image appeared above the center of the conference table. A creature unlike anything Dale had ever seen. It resembled a massive feline, but with 6 legs, armored plates along its spine, and what appeared to be retractable tentacles around its mouth region. Its hide was a mottled green and brown, perfect for camouflage in a jungle environment. This is a Vexthor, the ambassador explained. An apex predator from the outer territories of our confederation. Until recently they were thought to be nearly extinct, hunted to near oblivion centuries ago due to their aggression and predation on early Zalaxian settlements. And now they're making a comeback? Dale guessed. In a manner of speaking, Zixlith's expression was grave. 2 standard months ago, a science vessel discovered a previously unknown moon, orbiting a gas giant in the Perilia system. Initial scans detected a thriving ecosystem, including what appeared to be a large population of Vexthor. Let me guess, Dale said, studying the hologram. You sent a research team and things went badly. The research team is still there, Kreltix interjected, speaking for the first time. Trapped in their base camp, the Vexthor have surrounded the facility. 3 researchers are dead, and the others cannot reach their shuttle. Dale frowned. I sympathize with your situation, but I'm not seeing why you need a human. Surely you're military. We have no military as you would understand it, Lieutenant. Zixlith interrupted. The Salaxian Confederation has not engaged in warfare for over 700 years. We have security forces, yes, but they are ill-equipped to deal with a situation of this nature. Besides, Kreltix added, any attempt to land a large security force would likely provoke the Vexthor further. They are territorial and extraordinarily intelligent. So what exactly do you want me to do? Dale asked, although he was beginning to suspect the answer. We want you to go to the moon, infiltrate the Vexthor territory, and create a safe passage for our researchers to reach their shuttle. Zixlith stated matter-of-factly, as if asking him to pick up groceries. Dale stared at the ambassador, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he burst out laughing, a reaction that clearly startled the Zalaxians. You're joking, right? You want me to waltz into a pack of alien super predators and... What? Ask them nicely to let your people go? We researched your background extensively, Lieutenant, Kreltix said stiffly. Your doctoral thesis on predator-prey relationships across different ecosystems suggests you have unique insights into apex predator behavior, and as a human, you possess physical capabilities that no Zalaxian could match. Not to mention, Zixlith added, humans have a long history of domesticating dangerous predators on your own world. Dogs, cats, wolves, all were once threats to your species, and now they live in your homes. Dale pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a headache coming on. Ambassador, with all due respect, there's a world of difference between domesticating animals over thousands of years and walking into the territory of an alien predator I've never even seen before. We're not asking you to domesticate the Vexthor, Zixlith clarified. Merely to distract them long enough for our people to escape. So I'm bait then? Dale shook his head. Fantastic. You would not be unarmed, Kreltix assured him. We can provide non-lethal deterrence that may give you an advantage. May? Dale repeated incredulously. You're sending me against a creature that, according to you, nearly wiped out early Zalaxian settlements, and the best you can offer is equipment that may give me an advantage? A soft voice cut through the tension. If I may, Ambassador. All eyes turned to Nirizal, who had risen from her seat. Lieutenant Matthews raises valid concerns. Perhaps I should share my personal observations of human capabilities. Zixlith hesitated, then nodded. Proceed, attaché. Nirizal turned to Dale. 3 standard years ago, I was part of a joint xenobiology expedition to the Fraxian system. Our team included 2 humans, Doctors Leonid Koval and Amelia Way. During a survey, our shuttle crashed on an uninhabited moon. Her voice faltered slightly, and Dale noticed her crest trembling. The crash killed our pilot and injured most of the team. I suffered a broken limb. The temperatures on the moon's surface dropped to -40 degrees standard during the night cycle. That's well below freezing for water, Dale noted. Yes. For Zalaxians, such temperatures are rapidly fatal without protective gear, which was damaged in the crash. Dr. Koval carried 3 injured Zalaxians, including myself, 2 kilometers through a blizzard to a cave he had spotted. Dr. Way removed her thermal coat to provide additional warmth for us. Nirizal's large eyes met Dale's. They survived 16 hours in those conditions, Lieutenant, without proper gear, taking turns to venture outside to signal for rescue. Neither suffered any permanent damage, while we Zalaxians required extensive medical treatment despite having their protection. The room fell silent as Dale processed this information. What Attaché Nirizal is attempting to illustrate, Zixlith said quietly, is that your species possesses traits that make the impossible possible. The Vexthor would kill any Zalaxian within moments. A human might survive long enough to create a diversion. Dale stared at the hologram of the creature, his mind racing through scenarios, calculating odds. I'll need everything you have on these creatures. Behavioral studies, biological data, environmental preferences, everything. And I'll need to speak directly with the trapped research team. Then you'll help us? Kreltix asked, unable to mask his surprise. I didn't say that, Dale clarified. I'm saying I need more information before I decide whether this is a suicide mission or merely an extremely dangerous one. For the first time, a hint of what might be interpreted as humor crossed Zixlith's features. A most human response, Lieutenant. We expected nothing less. This is entirely insane, Dale muttered to himself as the shuttle broke through the cloud cover of the unnamed moon. Completely, utterly insane. Beside him, Nirizal monitored the navigation systems. She had volunteered to pilot him to the drop point, despite the obvious risks. Our scans indicate minimal Vex-Thor activity in this sector, she reported. It should be safe to land approximately 3 kilometers from the research base. Should be is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, Dale replied dryly, checking his equipment for the 10th time. The Salaxians had provided him with a stunning array of non-lethal deterrents. Sonic emitters designed to disorient the Vex-Thor, olfactory masks to hide his scent, and a repellent spray derived from the secretions of the Vex-Thor's natural prey. What they hadn't provided was anything that could actually stop one of the creatures if it decided to attack. Apparently, Zalaxian ethics prohibited lethal force against endangered species, even when those endangered species were perfectly happy to use lethal force themselves. The shuttle touched down in a small clearing. Through the viewports, Dale could see dense vegetation. Massive trees with blue-tinged leaves and thick underbrush that glowed faintly in the dappled light. "We've arrived at the drop point," Nirizal announced, powering down the engines. "The research base is due east. I've uploaded the coordinates to your mapping device." Dale nodded, securing the last of his gear. "Remember the plan. Wait here for 3 hours. If I haven't made contact by then, return to the station and inform Ambassador Zixalith that his brilliant plan failed." "I still believe you should allow me to accompany you," Nirizal said, her crest flattening with concern. "My knowledge of Salaxian biology could be useful if the researchers are injured." "And your knowledge won't do them any good if you become a Vex-Thor's lunch along the way," Dale countered. "No offense, but your species isn't built for this kind of operation. I'll move faster alone." Reluctantly, she conceded the point. "Be careful, Lieutenant. The Vex-Thor are not the only dangers on this moon. Some of the flora has defensive mechanisms that can be unpleasant." "Carnivorous plants?" Dale asked, pausing at the shuttle's airlock. "Worse. Hallucinogenic spores, paralyzing toxins, and one particularly nasty specimen that mimics the appearance of harmless ground cover until something walks across it. Then it rapidly grows tendrils that can pierce even our environmental suits." "Fantastic," Dale sighed. "Any other cheerful news before I go?" Nirizal's head tilted. That Salaxian almost smile. "Just one thing. The communications from the research team suggest the Vex-Thor are most active during the dawn hours. You have approximately 4 standard hours before the first sun rises." Dale checked the chronometer on his wrist. 4 hours to cover 3 kilometers of hostile terrain, infiltrate a predator-surrounded research base, and formulate an extraction plan. No problem. With a final nod to Nirizal, he cycled the airlock and stepped onto the alien moon. The gravity was slightly lower than Earth standard, about 0.8 G by his estimation, which would help with stamina but might throw off his movements until he adjusted. The air was breathable for humans, though rich in some gas that made it smell faintly of cinnamon. Dale took a moment to orient himself, then began moving east through the dense undergrowth, all senses on high alert. The forest was alive with sounds, chirps, clicks, and occasional deep, resonant calls that echoed through the canopy. Nothing that sounded like a 6-legged apex predator, at least not yet. He moved carefully but quickly, years of field research on Earth's most remote ecosystems guiding his movements. Step softly, test unfamiliar ground before putting your full weight on it. Watch for movement in the periphery of your vision. The first hour passed without incident. The second brought his first glimpse of local wildlife. Small gliding creatures that sailed from tree to tree on membrane-like wings, their bodies glowing with bioluminescent patterns. Halfway through the third hour, Dale froze. Ahead, barely visible through the undergrowth, something large was moving. He dropped to a crouch, activating the olfactory mask and pressing himself against the trunk of a massive tree. The creature that emerged into a small clearing was unmistakably a Vex-Thor, though the hologram hadn't done it justice. In person, it was far more terrifying, at least 2 meters tall at the shoulder, its 6 muscular legs moving with eerie silence despite its bulk. The armored plates along its spine shifted as it moved, and those tentacle-like appendages around its mouth extended to taste the air. Dale held his breath, though the olfactory mask should theoretically hide his scent. The Vex-Thor paused, its head swiveling slowly as it surveyed the clearing. For a heart-stopping moment, its gaze seemed to fix directly on Dale's position. Then, without warning, it charged, not toward Dale, but in the opposite direction, disappearing into the undergrowth with surprising speed. Dale released the breath he'd been holding, his heart hammering in his chest. "That was too close," he whispered to himself, checking his mapping device. The research base was less than a kilometer away now. Moving with renewed caution, he continued east, now occasionally catching glimpses of multiple Vex-Thor moving through the forest. They seemed to be patrolling, establishing a perimeter around what he assumed was the research base. Finally, as the forest began to thin, Dale caught sight of his destination, a prefabricated structure nestled against a rocky outcropping. Solar panels covered the roof, and reinforced windows reflected the blue-tinted sunlight. From his position, he could see at least 4 Vexthor prowling around the building, their movements displaying clear intelligence and coordination. "Now for the fun part," Dale muttered, reaching for his comm unit. He tuned it to the emergency frequency the research team had been using and transmitted a brief message. "Zalaxian Research Team, this is Lieutenant Dale Matthews, United Earth Coalition. I'm approximately 200 meters southwest of your position. Please respond, but keep transmission brief to avoid detection." For several tense moments, there was nothing but static. Then, a faint voice crackled through. "Lieutenant Matthews, this is Dr. Tevrix. How are you communicating without the Vexthor detecting you?" "Human tech," Dale replied simply. "Dr. Tevrix, I need a status report. How many survivors? Any injured? And what's the closest approach route that might give me cover?" 8 survivors, came the shaky response. 2 with serious injuries. The Vexthor have destroyed our vehicles and surrounded the base. They're hunting us, Lieutenant. Taking turns watching, waiting for us to attempt evacuation. What about approach routes? The northeast corner has a maintenance access that is partially obscured by vegetation, but the largest of the Vexthor has been guarding that area most vigilantly. Dale checked his map, locating the northeast corner. "Understood. Maintain radio silence unless emergency. I'll contact you when I'm in position." With the communication ended, Dale circled the perimeter of the clearing, staying within the tree line as he made his way toward the northeast corner of the research base. As he moved, he studied the Vexthor's patrol patterns, noting their coordination and the obvious hierarchy among them. The largest specimen, easily 20% bigger than the others, was indeed stationed near the northeast access point, just as Dr. Tevrix had described. It moved with an air of authority, occasionally vocalizing to the others in low, rumbling growls. "The Alpha," Dale whispered to himself, the xenobiologist in him momentarily overtaking the terrified human. "They've established a pack structure." That information was useful. Pack predators followed predictable behavioral patterns, regardless of their planet of origin. Hierarchy, territory defense, coordinated hunting, all were universal constants among pack hunters. An idea began to form in Dale's mind, a crazy, possibly suicidal idea, but one that played to his strengths as both a xenobiologist and a human. He reached into his pack and removed one of the sonic emitters the Zalaxians had provided. According to their data, the device emitted frequencies that mimicked the distress calls of juvenile Vexthor, designed to distract the adults long enough for an escape. But Dale had something else in mind. Moving to a position about 50 meters from the Alpha Vexthor, he carefully placed the emitter on the ground and activated it at its lowest setting. Then he retreated to a safe distance and waited. The effect was almost immediate. The Alpha's head snapped up, its sensory tentacles extending to full length as it scanned for the source of the sound. With a low growl, it began moving toward the emitter, its powerful legs carrying it swiftly through the undergrowth. As it approached the device, Dale increased the frequency slightly. Not enough to register as an alarm, but enough to maintain the creature's interest. The other Vexthor had noticed their leader's movement, but remained at their posts, occasionally glancing in the Alpha's direction. When the Alpha was directly over the emitter, Dale took a deep breath and stepped out from his hiding place, positioning himself where the creature could clearly see him. The Vexthor froze, its 6 legs planted firmly as it assessed this new threat. Its mouth tentacles writhed, and a deep warning growl emanated from its throat. "Easy now," Dale said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand his words but might respond to his tone. "I'm not here to hurt you." Slowly, telegraphing every movement, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small container, one of the food supplements he'd brought from the station. He opened it, revealing a protein-rich paste that, according to Zalaxian data, had a chemical composition similar to the Vexthor's natural prey. The Alpha's sensory tentacles extended further, tasting the air. Its growl subsided slightly, replaced by a curious rumbling. With deliberate movements, Dale squatted down and placed a small amount of the paste on a broad leaf, then backed away, maintaining eye contact with the massive predator. For what seemed like an eternity, the Vexthor remained motionless, its 6 eyes fixed on Dale. Then, with surprising grace for such a large creature, it moved forward and examined the offering, its tentacles delicately probing the paste. "That's it," Dale murmured, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to run. Just a little taste. After a moment's hesitation, the Vexithor consumed the paste, its tentacles sweeping it into its mouth. It made a sound Dale hadn't heard before, something between a purr and a chirp. Encouraged, Dale slowly reached into his pocket again, this time producing a larger portion of the paste. Instead of placing it down, however, he held it out in his open palm. The Alpha regarded him warily, clearly calculating the risk versus reward. Then, with astonishing delicacy, it extended a single tentacle and took the paste directly from his hand. "Good kitty," Dale whispered, a slightly hysterical laugh bubbling up in his throat. "Good six-legged, tentacle-faced, alien kitty." Over the next 20 minutes, through a careful dance of food offerings and non-threatening body language, Dale managed to establish a tentative rapport with the Alpha Vexthor. It allowed him to approach closer, even going so far as to permit a brief touch to its armored flank. The other Vexithor had noticed this interaction but maintained their distance, occasionally vocalizing to their leader as if seeking guidance. When Dale judged the moment right, he slowly began walking toward the research base, pausing frequently to offer more paste to the Alpha, who followed with cautious curiosity. As they approached the northeast access point, the other Vexthor began to move toward them, clearly agitated by this strange development. The Alpha issued a series of sharp growls, causing them to hesitate. Dale took advantage of the momentary confusion to activate his comm unit. "Dr. Tevrix, this is Matthews. I'm approaching the northeast access with a friend. Have everyone ready to move when I give the signal. And whatever you do, don't make any sudden movements or loud noises." Friend?" came the bewildered reply. "Lieutenant, what are you—" The transmission cut off as one of the Salaxians inside caught sight of Dale through a window, standing mere meters from the Alpha Vexthor. A cry of alarm rang out, audible even through the reinforced walls of the base. The Alpha tensed, its tentacles retracting as it shifted into an aggressive posture. The other Vexthor began closing in, forming a semicircle around Dale and their leader. "No, no, no," Dale muttered, reaching for the sonic emitter's remote control. He cranked it to maximum, causing it to emit a piercing wail designed to disorient the Vexthor. The effect was immediate, but not entirely what he'd hoped for. The predators scattered, disoriented by the sound, but the Alpha, after an initial flinch, fixed its gaze on Dale with what could only be described as betrayal. With a roar that shook the ground, it charged. Dale barely had time to dive to the side, rolling through undergrowth as the massive creature crashed past him. He scrambled to his feet, racing toward the research base's access door, which had begun to open. "Move, move, move!" he shouted to the Salaxians inside. "Get to the shuttle landing area now!" Terrified Zalaxian researchers began pouring out of the building, supporting those too injured to walk unaided. Dale positioned himself between them and the disoriented Vexthor, who were beginning to recover from the sonic assault. "Lieutenant, behind you!" one of the Zalaxians cried. Dale turned just in time to see the Alpha charging again, its 6 legs propelling it forward with terrifying speed. With no time to dodge, he braced for impact, and was knocked aside by a blur of blue scales as Nirizal appeared from nowhere, shoving him clear of the Alpha's path. The Vexithor skidded to a halt, clearly surprised by the new arrival. "What the hell are you doing here?" Dale demanded, pulling Nirizal to her feet. "You were supposed to wait at the shuttle." "And miss all the excitement?" she retorted. Her crest flared in what Dale now recognized as Zalaxian adrenaline response. "The research team won't make it to the landing site without protection. I brought help." As if on cue, the sound of multiple engines filled the air as 3 Zalaxian shuttles descended into the clearing, their repulsor fields creating a defensive perimeter around the fleeing researchers. The Vexthor scattered at this new threat, all except the Alpha, which stood its ground, growling at Dale with what seemed like personal affront. "We need to go," Nirizal urged, tugging at his arm. "The shuttles won't wait long." Dale hesitated, his gaze locked with the Alpha's. Then, making a decision that would later be described as typically human insanity in the official report, he shook off Nirizal's grip and stepped toward the massive predator. "Lieutenant!" Nirizal cried, but Dale ignored her. Slowly, he reached into his pocket and withdrew the last of the protein paste. The Alpha Vexthor growled, its tentacles writhing. I know," Dale said softly. "I broke the trust, but I didn't hurt your pack, and I didn't come to claim your territory." He placed the paste on a leaf and stepped back, then dropped to a crouch, making himself smaller and less threatening. For a long, tense moment, the Alpha remained motionless. Then, with deliberate caution, it approached the offering. Instead of taking it, however, it used a tentacle to nudge the leaf toward Dale. "Lieutenant, what's happening?" Nirizal whispered from behind him. "It's testing me," Dale replied without taking his eyes off the Vexthor. Seeing if I'll share food, not just offer it. With slow movements, he picked up the leaf and took a small amount of the paste, bringing it to his lips as if tasting it. The paste was bitter and unpleasant, but he managed not to grimace as he swallowed. Then he offered the leaf back to the Alpha. The tension in the air was palpable as the massive predator considered this exchange. Finally, it extended its tentacles and consumed the remaining paste. Then, in a gesture that left both Dale and Nirizal speechless, it lowered its massive head and briefly pressed its forehead against Dale's shoulder, before turning and melting into the forest, the rest of its pack following. What just happened? Nirizal asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dale stood slowly, a disbelieving smile spreading across his face. I think I just got adopted by an alien apex predator. The debriefing aboard the Zalaxian station lasted for hours, with Ambassador Zixlith and a team of xenobiologists questioning Dale about every aspect of his encounter with the Vexthor. Let me understand this correctly, Zixlith said, reviewing the holographic records captured by Dale's equipment. You intentionally approached the Alpha Vexithor, offered it food, and established what can only be described as a rudimentary social bond? Dale shrugged, still processing the events himself. That's one way to put it. I recognize pack behavior similar to Earth canids, wolves specifically. Many predator species respond to food sharing as a trust-building mechanism. But the risk, Kreltix interjected, mandibles clicking in what Dale now recognized as agitation. You had no guarantee the creature wouldn't simply kill you on sight. No, I didn't, Dale admitted. But your data suggested the Vexthor were intelligent, possibly even sapient. I took a calculated risk based on universal predator behaviors I've studied across multiple ecosystems. A risk no Zalaxian would ever consider, Ambassador Zixlith observed, something like admiration creeping into their tone. And yet, you not only survived, but managed to form a connection with a creature our ancestors considered too dangerous to coexist with. The room fell silent as the implications settled over the gathered Zalaxians. Finally, Nirizal spoke up from her position near the door. Perhaps, she said tentatively, we have been approaching our relationship with the Vexthor incorrectly all along. We viewed them as mindless killers to be feared or eliminated, when in reality, they may simply be territorial predators protecting their domain. Dale nodded. Exactly. Most predators don't attack out of malice. They attack to secure resources, protect their young, or defend territory. The research base was placed directly in what appeared to be their established hunting grounds. But how did you know sharing food would work? Another Zalaxian researcher asked. That seems counterintuitive when dealing with a predator. It was a hunch based on the behavior I observed, Dale explained. The Vexthor were coordinating their surveillance of the base, taking shifts, communicating with vocalizations, all signs of social intelligence. Social predators often have rituals around food sharing that establish pack hierarchy and bonding. So you, what, made yourself part of their pack? Kreltix asked incredulously. Dale laughed. I wouldn't go that far. Let's say I established myself as a non-threat, maybe even a potential ally. The head touch at the end, that was unexpected. On Earth, many social mammals use physical contact to reinforce social bonds. It seems Vexthor might do something similar. Ambassador Zixlith's crest rippled thoughtfully. This changes our understanding not only of the Vexthor, but potentially of dozens of other species previously classified as too dangerous for contact. Lieutenant Matthews, would you be willing to compile your observations into a formal report for our xenobiology division? Of course, Dale agreed. Though I'd like to suggest something further, if I may. Go on. The moon where the Vexthor live. It's a perfect natural laboratory for studying their behavior in the wild. With proper precautions and respect for their territory, a small research team could establish an observation post well away from their hunting grounds. Murmurs broke out among the Zalaxians, some excited, others clearly apprehensive. And who would lead such a team? Kreltix asked. Surely you don't expect Zalaxians to volunteer after what happened to the previous expedition. Dale met the sub-ambassador's gaze steadily. Actually, I was thinking I might stick around for a while. If you're interested in establishing a joint human Zalaxian research project, I'd be happy to coordinate. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. You would do this? Ambassador Zixlith asked. After nearly being killed? Ambassador, Dale said with a grin. For a xenobiologist, the opportunity to study an intelligent apex predator in its natural habitat is like hitting the scientific lottery. I'd be a fool to walk away. I would volunteer to assist, Nirizal said suddenly, stepping forward. Her announcement clearly shocked the other Zalaxians. I've already observed Lieutenant Matthews' methods in the field. With proper training and human protection protocols, we could establish a safe research program. For a long moment, Ambassador Zixlith considered the proposal, head tilted in the Zalaxian equivalent of deep thought. Finally, they nodded. The Zalaxian Confederation has long prided itself on scientific advancement. Yet our natural caution has sometimes limited our horizons. Perhaps it is time we learned from our human allies how to approach the universe with both wisdom and courage. They turned to Dale. Lieutenant Matthews, I will present your proposal to the Science Council. I believe they will find the potential knowledge to be gained outweighs the perceived risks, especially with human expertise to guide the project. Dale inclined his head in the formal Zalaxian gesture of respect. Thank you, Ambassador. I look forward to working with your people. As the meeting concluded and the Zalaxians filed out, Nirizal approached Dale, her crest fluttering with what he now recognized as excitement. Did you really mean it? She asked. About staying to study the Vexthor? Absolutely, Dale confirmed. Though I'm a bit surprised you volunteered so quickly. I was under the impression most Zalaxians would rather eat their own crest than get within a light year of a Vexthor. Nirizal's head tilted in amusement. Most would, but I've always been considered unusual by my peers. Too curious, too willing to take risks. It's why I was assigned to diplomatic services rather than pure research. Their loss is my gain then, Dale replied. I'll need a local expert on Zalaxian biology and ecology if we're going to make this work. And I need someone who can teach me how humans manage to be so... She searched for the word. Fearlessly adaptable. Dale laughed. Trust me, I was terrified the entire time. Humans aren't fearless. We're just good at functioning despite the fear. A valuable skill, she observed. One my people could benefit from learning. And there are plenty of things humans could learn from Zalaxians, Dale countered. Your environmental sustainability technologies alone are centuries ahead of ours. A comfortable silence fell between them as they walked toward the station's observation deck. Through the massive viewport, the dwarf star bathed the interior in a warm golden light. You know, Dale said thoughtfully, when Commander Walsh assigned me to this mission, I thought it was either a cosmic joke or a career-ending disaster. Now I'm thinking it might be the opportunity of a lifetime. For both our species, Nirizal agreed. The Science Council will likely approve the joint research initiative within days. We should begin preparations immediately. Always in a rush, Dale teased. Maybe that's another human trait you've picked up. Perhaps, she conceded with a flutter of her crest. Or perhaps I'm simply eager to see what happens when you attempt to make friends with another apex predator. Hey, it worked once, didn't it? Yes, Nirizal said, her large eyes studying him with newfound respect. Yes, it did. Most impressively so. 3 months later, Dale stood at the edge of a small clearing on the unnamed moon, observing through high-powered binoculars as a group of Vexthor taught their young to hunt. The research station, a modest but well-equipped facility, sat on a ridge 2 kilometers away, safely outside the predator's primary territory, but close enough for detailed observations. They're using coordinated flanking maneuvers again, he noted into his recorder. The juveniles are being positioned as blockers while the adults drive the prey toward them. Remarkable tactical awareness. Behind him, Nirizal was collecting samples from a peculiar fungus growing on the trees surrounding the clearing. In the months since the research project had begun, she had adapted remarkably well to fieldwork, developing a confidence that surprised even her. The fungal network appears to have symbiotic relationships with both the trees and the soil microbiome, she reported, carefully storing a specimen. I believe it may serve as a communication conduit similar to mycelial networks on Earth. Dale lowered his binoculars as the Vexthor pack successfully brought down their prey, a large 6-legged herbivore that had wandered too far from its herd. Did you get that hunt recorded? The coordination was textbook perfect. Full spectrum, Nirizal confirmed, tapping the drone hovering silently above them. Visual, infrared, and audio. Dr. Kaveri will be thrilled. It confirms her hypothesis about their hunting strategies. Dr. Lakshmi Kaveri was one of 4 human xenobiologists who had joined the research project, along with 6 more Zalaxians who had volunteered after the initial success. What had begun as a tentative exploration had quickly evolved into one of the most productive cross-species scientific collaborations in recent memory. Look, Dale said suddenly, pointing toward the far side of the clearing. Is that? Nirizal followed his gaze and gasped softly. It's your friend, the Alpha. Sure enough, the massive Vexthor that had nearly killed Dale during their first encounter was approaching the edge of the clearing. Even from a distance it was unmistakable, larger than the others, with distinctive scarring along its left flank and a peculiar pattern to its armor plates. Without warning, the Alpha's head swung in their direction, its sensory tentacles extended to their full length. Though they were downwind and using scent-masking technology, something had alerted the creature to their presence. Stay perfectly still, Dale whispered, though Nirizal hardly needed the warning. Months of fieldwork had taught her the proper protocols. The Alpha Vexthor stared in their direction for a long moment, then made a sound they had never recorded before. A series of low, rhythmic pulses that seemed to resonate through the forest. The other Vexthor paused in their feeding, heads raised attentively. Then, to Dale's astonishment, the Alpha began moving directly toward their position. Should we retreat? Nirizal asked quietly, her voice steady despite the potential danger. Dale considered their options. They were well concealed in a blind designed to mimic natural vegetation, and their exit route was clear if they needed to make a quick departure. But something about the Alpha's behavior struck him as more curious than threatening. Not yet, he decided. It's not displaying aggression. Let's see what it does. As the massive predator approached, Dale felt a familiar mixture of awe and fear. These creatures were magnificent, perfectly adapted to their environment, intelligent, and socially complex. In the months of observation, they had documented behaviors that suggested not just intelligence but possibly the beginnings of culture, transmitting knowledge from adults to young, using tools to extract prey from burrows, even what appeared to be ritualized conflict resolution between competing adults. The Alpha stopped approximately 20 meters from their blind, its 6 eyes scanning the vegetation. Then, with deliberate movements, it lowered its massive bulk to the ground and placed something on the forest floor. Is that? Nirizal began. I think it's bringing us something, Dale replied, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. After depositing the object, the Alpha backed away several meters and waited, its tentacles writhing with what their research suggested was anticipation. Dale made a decision that would later be added to the growing list of crazy human behaviors in Nirizal's personal research journal. He carefully emerged from the blind, moving slowly to avoid triggering a predatory response. Lieutenant! Nirizal hissed, but he held up a hand to reassure her. It's okay, he said softly. It recognized us. Recognized me. I think it's attempting communication. As Dale approached the spot where the Alpha had placed its offering, he could see it was a section of a plant they had not yet catalogued. A bulbous root structure with phosphorescent blue veins running through its flesh. The Alpha Vexithor watched him intently, making no move to attack or retreat. When Dale carefully picked up the offering, the creature's tentacles rippled in what their research suggested was a sign of approval. Thank you, Dale said, knowing the predator couldn't understand his words but might recognize his tone. This is very interesting. To his amazement, the Alpha made the head-touching gesture they had observed during bonding rituals between pack members, dipping its massive head in Dale's direction before turning and melting back into the forest. Nirizal emerged from the blind, her crest fully extended in excitement. Did that just happen? Did an apex predator just bring you a gift? Dale examined the plant material carefully. Not just any gift. This is something we haven't documented yet. And look at the bioluminescent properties. It could have pharmaceutical applications we haven't even considered. But why would it bring this to you? Nirizal asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her lingering caution. Dale shook his head, smiling. I have no idea. Maybe it recognized us as the weird creatures who keep watching them. Maybe it remembers our initial encounter. Or maybe what? Maybe it's just as curious about us as we are about it? Dale finished, carefully storing the specimen. Intelligence recognizing intelligence across species boundaries. Nirizal's head tilted in the expression Dale had come to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. A theory the Zalaxian Science Academy would have dismissed as anthropomorphic projection 3 months ago. And now? Now, I believe they will find it worthy of serious consideration, she replied. Your human tendency to see intelligence and intention in other species, what many of my colleagues dismissed as projection, has proven remarkably accurate in our observations. Dale grinned. Just wait until we publish our findings. Apex predator gift-giving behaviors. Implications for cross-species communication. We'll either win the Galactic Science Prize or be laughed out of the academic community. With the video evidence, I suspect the former, Nirizal said confidently. This changes everything we thought we knew about Vex Thor cognition. As they packed up their equipment and began the trek back to the research station, Dale reflected on how drastically his life had changed in the span of a few months. From reluctant diplomat to field researcher on an alien moon, studying creatures that had once been considered too dangerous to approach. You know, he said as they crested a ridge overlooking the valley where the Vex Thor made their home. Commander Walsh is going to be insufferably smug when she hears about this. She said this assignment would be career-defining. Was she wrong? Nirizal asked. Dale laughed. No, for once the brass got it exactly right, though I doubt even she imagined I'd end up getting gift baskets from alien apex predators. Perhaps this is why the Zalaxian Confederation was so eager to establish diplomatic relations with humans, Nirizal mused. Your species has a remarkable ability to find connection even in the most unlikely places. Or we're just too stubborn to accept that some things should be left alone, Dale countered with a self-deprecating smile. Either way, Nirizal said, her voice taking on the formal tone she used for important statements, I am grateful for what you've taught me, Lieutenant Matthews. What's that? That fear need not define our limitations. That curiosity, properly directed, can overcome even the most ingrained caution. And that sometimes, what appears most dangerous may simply be misunderstood. Dale glanced at his Zalaxian colleague, no, his friend, with genuine affection. That goes both ways, you know. Your people's methodical approach has kept us from making potentially catastrophic mistakes. We make a good team. Indeed we do, Nirizal agreed. The first of many, I hope, as our species continue to learn from each other. As they approached the research station, where human and Zalaxian scientists worked side by side to understand a world neither species could fully comprehend alone, Dale felt a profound sense of rightness. This, the pursuit of knowledge across boundaries of species and culture, this was diplomacy in its truest form. And if it occasionally involved playing fetch with six-legged alien predators, well, that was just one more story for the mission reports that Commander Walsh probably wouldn't believe anyway. You tamed our apex predator? The young Zalaxian student's crest was fully extended in shock as she stared at the holographic images projected above the lecture hall table. But they're supposed to be untamable. Every historical account says they're just killers. Professor Nirizal chuckled, her once vibrant blue scales now faded to a distinguished powder blue with age. 25 years as the head of the Interspecies Communication Department at the Confederation Science Academy had given her ample experience with stunned students. First, she corrected gently, we didn't tame anything. The Vex Thor remain wild predators with their own society and behaviors. What we established was a form of mutual recognition and respect. And second, she gestured to the human standing beside her, his hair now streaked with gray, but his eyes still bright with the same curiosity that had defined him decades ago. I didn't do it. He did. Professor Dale Matthews smiled at the gathered Zalaxian students, and even that's giving me too much credit. The Vex Thor chose to interact with us. We simply provided the opportunity. Another student raised a hand, but the textbooks say Vex Thor killed hundreds of early Zalaxian settlers. How could such aggressive creatures suddenly decide to be friendly? An excellent question, Dale acknowledged. The key word there is early settlers. Those encounters happened during colonial expansion into Vex Thor territories. Their hunting grounds were being destroyed, their prey driven away or killed. They reacted as any intelligent species would when threatened. The revolution in our understanding, Nirizal added, came when we began approaching them not as mindless beasts to be feared or conquered, but as intelligent beings with their own social structures and needs. Dale nodded. A principle that has since been applied to dozens of other species previously classified as too dangerous for contact. The Mortian cave dwellers, the Threlax swarm entities, all now recognized as sapient or near-sapient species with whom communication is possible. A third student, more bold than the others, spoke up. Is it true that you have a Vex Thor named after you, Professor Matthews? Dale laughed. Well, not exactly. The Vex Thor don't use names as we understand them. But there is a particular genetic line descended from the alpha I first interacted with, that the research team informally refers to as Matthews' line. They exhibit particularly strong curiosity toward human researchers. Which brings us to today's actual topic, Nirizal said, redirecting the conversation. Your final assignment will require you to review case studies of first contact scenarios between different species and analyze the communication methodologies employed. She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a timeline of various interspecies contact events throughout the known galaxy. The Vex-Thor case study is just one example, albeit a particularly dramatic one, of how approaching other beings with respect and curiosity rather than fear can lead to unexpected breakthroughs. Even when those beings have tentacles and 6 legs, Dale added with a wink that made the students' crests flutter in amusement. As the lecture continued, Dale found himself reflecting on the long, strange journey that had brought him here. From reluctant diplomat to pioneering researcher, to, eventually, the first human professor at the Confederation Science Academy. The joint research initiative that had begun with a single terrifying encounter had blossomed into one of the most successful collaborative programs in the galaxy, fundamentally changing how both humans and Zalaxians approached xenobiology. When the class ended and the students filed out, Nirizal turned to her old friend and colleague. "You still enjoy shocking them with that story, don't you?" "Can you blame me?" Dale replied with a grin. "The looks on their faces when they see the footage of that first head touch never gets old." "They can't comprehend it," Nirizal agreed. "The idea that one of the most feared predators in Zalaxian history would voluntarily approach a strange alien being and initiate contact. It contradicts everything they were taught growing up." "Which is precisely why we keep telling the story," Dale said, his expression growing more serious. "Every preconception challenged, every fear overcome. It opens up new possibilities." Nirizal's head tilted in agreement. "Speaking of new possibilities, the request from the Earth delegation arrived this morning. They're asking if you'll consider leading the first contact team for the Epsilon Indy system." Dale raised an eyebrow. "At my age? I thought they'd want someone younger, someone with more field experience in the current protocols." "They specifically requested the human who made friends with a Vex-Thor," Nirizal said, amusement clear in her voice. "Apparently your reputation precedes you, even after all these years." Dale shook his head, laughing. "Well, I suppose there are worse things to be known for than having a knack for befriending dangerous aliens." "Will you accept?" He considered the question, gazing out the window at the Zalaxian skyline, a place that had become as much home to him as Earth had ever been. "One more adventure? Why not? But on one condition." "Yes?" "You come with me," Dale said simply. "After all this time, I still need someone to tell me when I'm about to do something monumentally stupid." Nirizal's crest fluttered with affection. "As if I would let you go without me. Who else would document your reckless human behaviors for posterity?" As they left the lecture hall together, an unlikely pair that had become the embodiment of successful interspecies cooperation, Dale reflected that perhaps the greatest discovery of his career hadn't been about the Vex-Thor at all. It had been the discovery that across the vast gulfs of evolution and biology, intelligence could recognize intelligence, curiosity could bridge differences, and friendship could flourish in the most unexpected places, even between a human who didn't know when to be afraid and aliens who had never before had reason to be brave. The end.